If you've ever been the only gay guy at a corporate retreat, you know the unique hell it can be. Picture this, a rustic, team-building getaway in the middle of nowhere, 2.5 hours from the nearest decent coffee shop, filled with over-caffeinated marketing bros and HR ladies who all act like being fun is part of their job description. There were name tags. There were icebreakers. And there I was, standing in the buffet line for boxed wine and stale charcuterie, counting how many hours I had to fake smile before I could go back to my room and binge old episodes of Top Chef. I wasn't even supposed to go. My manager, Dave, signed me up last minute because your voice would be good in the brainstorming sessions. Translation: we need at least one openly gay guy in the group photo for diversity optics. I didn't even fight it. I just packed a weekend bag, threw on a button-up that said, "I tried," and braced myself for small talk. Then I met him. He wasn't in our department, which is probably why I hadn't noticed him before. I first saw him at the group welcome dinner. Long tables, loud voices, people playing two truths and a lie, like it wasn't the year 2025. I was zoning out when someone cracked a joke about being bi for tax season, and I muttered under my breath, "Wow, progressive and hilarious. I'm overwhelmed." That's when I heard it. One person, maybe 2 seats over, laughing. Not just a polite chuckle, an actual laugh. Sharp, short, caught-off-guard kind of laugh. The kind that says, "I got that. I actually heard you." I looked over. He was already looking at me. Dark hair, thick eyebrows, a beer bottle resting lightly between his hands. He smiled just a little and said, "That was mean," like it was a compliment. I shrugged. "So was the chicken." He laughed again, softer this time, then nodded at the untouched plate in front of him. "Yeah, I'm sticking to wine and olives. Survival mode." We didn't talk much more that night. He ended up across the fire pit during the optional social hour, chatting with a group of UX designers who all looked like they went to Burning Man together. I slipped away early, faked a phone call, and walked back to my cabin alone. But the next morning, there he was again, at breakfast, sitting alone at a two-top with headphones on. I took the seat across from him without asking. He looked up, smiled like he'd expected it, and popped out one earbud. "You know they have coffee," he said, eyeing the energy drink I was clutching like a lifeline. I held it up. "Coffee's for people who still have hope." He laughed again. And just like that, it began. His name was Aaron. We traded names the next morning after I sat down across from him like it was the most normal thing in the world. No hesitation, no fake, "Is this seat taken?" awkwardness. Just a silent agreement that this table, this unspoken space between us, belonged to us now. He worked in data, of course. All the cute ones do. Product analytics, based in our Chicago office. But remote 90% of the time, he added, like it mattered. I mostly talk to spreadsheets and dashboards. That's my primary relationship. I grinned into my granola. Mine's with the Slack reaction emoji. He sipped his coffee. A classic. I don't know how to explain it, but talking to him was easy. You know how sometimes when you meet someone new, every sentence feels like trying to merge into traffic without signaling? That wasn't us. We weren't trying to impress each other. We weren't locked in some secret battle of who's cooler or funnier or more socially fluent. We were just two guys eating breakfast at a company retreat, bonded by shared sarcasm and the quiet relief of not being alone. Over the next 2 days, we kept finding each other. Not in a planned way, it just happened. I'd glance across the patio during a workshop break, and there he'd be, already looking my way. Or I'd linger by the snack table, pretending to debate whether to grab another granola bar, and he'd show up beside me, reaching for the same one. He liked bitter chocolate and hated people who clapped when planes landed. He once lied on a dating app that he'd run a half marathon just so a guy would agree to meet up. They never ended up dating, but he did eventually run one out of guilt. He had a dog named Brisket. He thought brunch was a scam invented by people who hate breakfast food but love Instagram. By the second night, we were deliberately skipping the group activities. "Do you want to go to the moonlight hike?" he asked me, eyes wide with mock enthusiasm. I blinked at him. "Do I want to walk slowly through the woods with a bunch of coworkers pretending not to be drunk?" "Yes, of course," he smiled. "Cool, so I'll see you at the fire pit instead." We sat on the far side of the lodge that night, our legs stretched toward the edge of a low stone hearth, just the two of us and the sound of logs cracking. People moved in and out behind us, mingling and giggling and pretending to network. We said nothing for a while, and then, somehow, everything. "You know what's weird?" he said after a long pause. "You spend so much time trying to blend in at work, like, be professional, be neutral, don't be too much anything." I nodded, staring at the flames. "Especially if you're gay." He let out a breath, almost like a laugh. "Exactly. It's not even about hiding, really. Just not giving anyone too much of anything to talk about. You play the part." "Yup." The fire popped. A log shifted, sending a flurry of sparks into the air. I could feel the warmth on my legs, but it didn't compete with the buzz under my skin. "I haven't talked like this in a long time," I admitted. He turned his head. "What? Like, honestly?" I nodded. "Yeah." No filter, no HR script. Aaron smiled faintly, eyes soft behind the flicker of the firelight. "Me neither." There was a beat, and then we both looked away at the same time. Not embarrassed, exactly. Just aware. The kind of moment where things could tip either way. You lean in, or you back off. You say something, or you don't. We didn't, not that night. But the air between us had changed. He knew it, I knew it. And once that line's been quietly crossed, once two people realize they're not just chatting, not just passing time, you can't really go back. That night, as I climbed the hill back toward my room, I heard footsteps behind me and turned, half hoping. It wasn't him. But I thought about him the entire walk back, and I didn't sleep easily. The next morning, everything was the same, but it felt different. You know that feeling when you've spent the night thinking about someone, and then you see them again, and suddenly every glance, every smile feels loaded? Like you're reading a secret book only the two of you can see? That's what breakfast was like. Aaron walked in late, hair still damp from a shower, in a hoodie that made him look younger and softer than he had the night before. His eyes scanned the room quickly, too quickly, before landing on me. I raised my coffee in a half wave. He smiled, small and private, and walked straight to my table. "Someone's awake early," he said as he sat down across from me. I grinned. "Couldn't sleep. Too much excitement from the moonlight hike." He gave me a slow, knowing look. "Yeah. Must have been wild." We didn't talk about the fire pit. Not directly. But it was there, in the way our knees bumped under the table, and neither of us moved. In the way he kept smiling at the floor after every joke I made, like he couldn't quite look at me. By noon, we were full-on avoiding our assigned breakout groups. Technically, we were both supposed to be in different cabins doing some ridiculous vision board activity. But instead, we ended up sitting on the porch of the main lodge with 2 beers and a single shared bag of off-brand trail mix. We didn't even try to justify it. "It's weird," I said, watching a group of sales guys try to set up cornhole on a patch of uneven grass. "You come on trips like this thinking nothing's going to happen, and then something does." Aaron looked over. "Yeah," I shrugged. I don't really talk to anyone at work like I talk to you." He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "I think about that sometimes. Like, maybe it's not that people at work aren't interesting. Maybe it's that nobody really sees anyone." I raised an eyebrow. "You just got philosophical over M and M's and raisins." He laughed. "That's how you know it's real." We didn't kiss. Not that day. But I started noticing things. How close he sat to me. How he sometimes repeated my jokes under his breath, like he was keeping them. How his hand would brush my arm during conversation, and he'd leave it there a little longer each time. How our legs stayed tangled even after the joke ended. That evening, we showed up to the big closing dinner 15 minutes late, together. People noticed. We didn't care. Aaron leaned in once, just enough for his shoulder to press against mine, and said, "This feels like high school. Like we're passing notes under the table." I smiled without looking at him. "What did the note say?" He took a breath. It said, "Meet me after." And just like that, I knew this wasn't just a retreat thing. This wasn't just about being the only 2 gay guys in the room. This was about him, about the way I felt lighter around him. The way silence between us didn't feel awkward. It felt intentional. After dinner, we walked down toward the lake. No one followed. No one needed to. It was cool enough that I could see my breath. The surface of the water was completely still, like it was holding its own secrets. We stood there for a long time, not talking, just existing. Then he said, "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Is this just a retreat thing for you?" I turned to look at him. His hands were shoved deep into his hoodie pockets, and his voice was too casual to be casual. "No," I said, "I don't think it is." He looked at me then, and I mean looked, like he was studying every line of my face to see if I was bluffing. And when he saw I wasn't, he stepped just a little closer. Still not kissing, not yet, but closer. That kind of close where the air between you starts to charge. I wanted to reach out and touch him. I wanted to see what it felt like to press my palm against his chest and feel his heartbeat. But I didn't. Not yet. Some things you let build. And whatever this was, it was still building. We didn't kiss that night by the lake. Instead, we just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, like some invisible thread had wrapped itself around the space between us and pulled tight, but not enough to snap. That's the thing about something real starting. It doesn't need fireworks. It just needs silence that feels like safety. Eventually, Aaron said, "We should probably head back before they send a search party." "Let them search," I muttered. He smiled, but didn't push. Instead, we walked back together slowly, like we were dragging time behind us. At the fork in the path, his cabin to the left, mine to the right, he stopped. "I'll see you tomorrow?" It was half question, half certainty. "You better," I said. He nodded once, like he was memorizing my face, then turned and left. I stood there for a minute longer than I needed to. The night felt too quiet, like it had just swallowed something important. Back in my room, I lay on the stiff mattress staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what exactly was happening. I wasn't a stranger to fleeting things. Coffee dates that never turned into anything. But this was slower, quieter, deeper. It felt like something was being built, piece by piece, behind our backs. The last day of the retreat was always meant to be half-hearted. Half the staff was already thinking about flights and inboxes and unread Slack messages. The other half was hungover from the previous night's wine-induced karaoke session. Aaron and I slipped away early, without announcing it. We grabbed 2 to-go coffees and walked down the same lake path as before, but this time, in daylight. Everything looked less mysterious and more beautiful, like it was finally okay to be seen. "So," he said as we reached the dock, sitting with his legs stretched out over the edge, "are you going to tell me what happens after this?" I sat beside him, careful to keep our arms just close enough. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he shrugged, "you go back to New York. I go back to Chicago. And then what? We remember this as a weird, lovely blip?" His tone was light, but there was something behind it. A small crack he didn't want me to see. I didn't answer right away. I was watching the way the wind skimmed the water, how it made everything look like it was in motion, even when nothing really was. "I don't want this to be a blip," I finally said. He turned to me. "Then what do you want?" I looked at him, and I said it before I could overthink it. "I want your number. I want to text you dumb things at 1 a.m. I want to send you playlists. I want to ask you what you're making for dinner, and pretend to care even when I don't. I want to FaceTime with a stupid filter on just to see you laugh. I want to see what happens." He stared at me. And then, finally, he leaned in. No hesitation. No testing the water. His lips were warm and hesitant at first, like he didn't quite believe we were allowed to be doing this. But then I kissed him back, and it shifted. Grew real. His hand came to rest lightly on my knee, and mine on the back of his neck, and the kiss deepened until the dock didn't matter, the lake didn't matter, the world didn't matter. When we pulled apart, we were both grinning like idiots. "Well," he said, breathless, "that was overdue." "Yeah," I said, "just a little." He leaned his head on my shoulder. "I'm really glad you made that joke," he murmured. "So am I. We spent the next 2 hours talking like we hadn't been talking all weekend. Looser, more playful, less guarded. We compared coming out stories. Worst dates. Best dates. The first time we knew. The first time we were scared. The first time we weren't. He told me about his ex and how it ended too gently to even call it heartbreak. I told him about the guy the first thought was it, until I realized I had built the relationship in my own head and he just happened to live inside it. There was no rush to be charming. We'd already seen each other with bedhead and mismatched socks. The day started to slip away. Our coworkers were already packing up. The lodge was slowly deflating like a party balloon left too long in the sun. And still, we sat there. Eventually, we stood, and this time, when we walked back up the path, our hands found each other without a word. Not a blip. Not anymore. We said goodbye, like two people who didn't believe it would actually be goodbye. No dramatic kiss at the airport. No promises scribbled on napkins. Just a firm squeeze of the hand, one last long look, and a mutual, unspoken understanding. This isn't over. I remember watching him disappear through the terminal gate, his hoodie pulled up, the strap of his backpack slung over one shoulder. He didn't look back. But I wasn't offended. I didn't look back either when I boarded mine an hour later. Some things don't need the movie ending to be real. We started texting on the train ride home. Dumb stuff, mostly memes, jokes, a blurry photo of the guy in the next row who looked like he was trying to start a podcast mid-transit. Aaron replied with a voice memo of himself whispering fake commentary like, "We're live here on Straight Thoughts with Chad." And I almost dropped my phone laughing. The rhythm came naturally. He'd text in the morning when he let brisket out. I'd send him weird coffee shop observations from my neighborhood. The space between our cities felt manageable. Easier than I expected. A week after the retreat, I FaceTimed him while I was making dinner. "Guess what I made?" I said, pointing the camera at a lumpy pan of undercooked risotto. "Is that oatmeal?" I panned up to my face. "How dare you?" He grinned. "I thought gay men were supposed to know how to cook." "You're thinking of yourself, Aaron. I'll just know how to plate takeout nicely." It became our thing. FaceTiming during dinner. Him in his apartment with string lights and exposed brick. Me in mine, half-dressed in gym shorts and socks. Usually standing over a half-empty pan of whatever I was pretending to make work. We didn't talk about what we were doing. Not exactly. We didn't label it or map it out. There were no timelines. Just us, checking in, laughing, lingering in each other's lives. One night, about 3 weeks after the retreat, he said it. "I've been thinking," he said, curled sideways on his couch, brisket snoring softly on his lap. "Uh-oh. Shut up!" He laughed. Then added, "What if I visited?" It took me a second to respond, not because I was surprised, but because something in me had been hoping he'd say it, and I was afraid of hoping too hard. "Like, soon?" I asked. "Yeah, like, next weekend?" I leaned back in my chair. My heart was pounding in that weird way it does when you hear exactly what you wanted and now have to make it real. "I'd like that," I said. "A lot." He smiled. It was a shy smile, but it reached his eyes. "Cool. I'll look at flights." Just like that, the idea of him here became real. He landed late on a Friday. I took the subway to meet him at LaGuardia, even though he offered to just Uber. "No way," I told him. "If I make you Uber, it sets a bad tone. I have to do the whole romantic comedy reunion thing. It's legally required." When I saw him come through security, hair messy from the flight, eyes tired but lit up when he spotted me, I realized how long it had actually felt since I'd seen him. The screen didn't do him justice. He looked better in person, calmer, more real. We didn't make a scene. I just walked up, took his bag, and leaned in so he could kiss me quickly. It wasn't dramatic. Just natural, like we'd done it 100 times before. He stayed for 4 days. 4 days of walking through my neighborhood, side by side. 4 days of cooking together, sort of. 4 days of slow mornings and even slower nights. And on the last night, lying in bed with the city humming through my windows, Aaron said something I'll never forget. "This is gonna sound dumb," he whispered. "Try me. I've never dated someone like this before." Like, what? Like, quietly. Like it's just ours. Not for show. Not because we need to prove something. just because it feels good. I looked over at him in the dark, his silhouette, his breath, his closeness. Yeah, I said. Me neither. After Aaron's visit, everything changed, but in that gentle, quiet way where the change doesn't feel like an explosion, just a shift. Like something in the air moved slightly, and now everything else is adjusting to follow. He texted me on the plane home, just one sentence. That felt like something. I stared at it for a second before replying. It was? It's weird how quickly a new person can become a part of your daily rhythm. We didn't make any promises, no boyfriend titles, no exclusivity conversations right away, but something about the way we moved through each other's lives felt real, solid. Like he'd taken a seat in a room I didn't even know I'd been saving. Some nights we didn't talk. Other nights we'd call and leave the line open while we did our own thing. Me cleaning my kitchen, him folding laundry, while Brisket circled his feet. The silence never felt heavy. He started sending me links to places in New York. If I ever moved, he'd say casually, not saying I would, but if. I'd send him dumb TikToks of guys rating Trader Joe's frozen meals, and he'd reply with a fully annotated analysis of his own rankings, like it was the SAT. We didn't say, I miss you, out loud for a while, but I felt it, in the spaces between our conversations. In the way we'd linger at the end of a call like neither of us wanted to be the first to hang up. And then, one night, we were talking about absolutely nothing. Seriously, like nothing. I think it started with a debate over whether mini pancakes were superior to waffles. And I said, I miss you. I didn't mean to, it just slipped. Aaron was quiet for a second. I could hear the sound of his laptop clicking shut. Yeah, he said softly. Yeah, I said. I miss your face. I miss your dumb hoodie. I miss the way you fake hate musicals, but still know every word to Dear Evan Hansen. He laughed, which helped. Okay, first of all, that was one time, and I was emotionally vulnerable. I stand by it. Yeah, he said, then added quieter, I miss you too. It was around then that the idea started growing. One of us would move. It wasn't a decision, not at first, just a thought we kept turning over in our hands. I had more flexibility in my job, but he had a deeper network in Chicago. We weighed pros and cons like adults, but underneath all the logistics was this very unadult question. Who do I want to wake up next to? Because at a certain point, the answer to that question becomes more important than anything else. Aaron came back to visit a month later, then again 3 weeks after that. We stopped pretending this was just casual. One night, in my apartment, curled up under my stupid plaid comforter, he looked at me and said, I want to make this real. Not just visits, not just weekends. I didn't hesitate. Then let's make it real. He moved in that fall. No dramatic Instagram post, no new chapter caption. Just a slow shift, a toothbrush next to mine, a drawer filling up with his socks. Brisket's bed appearing by the radiator like it had always been there. We still had our weird rituals. He still rolled his eyes at my love of silent black and white films. I still mocked his obsession with multi-step skincare routines. But we fit. In a way I didn't think two people could. One night, months later, we were out at a friend's party. Some rooftop thing with overpriced drinks and aggressively curated playlists. We were standing off to the side, people watching, when one of Aaron's friends came up and said, You guys are the quietest couple I've ever seen. What's your secret? Aaron looked at me, and then he said something I'll never forget. We started with silence, he said, and it never felt empty. I reached for his hand and gave it a small squeeze. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of being seen. It's been over a year now since that retreat. People always ask how we met, and it's funny. I never know whether to give them the short version or the real one. The short version is easy. We met at a company retreat. But the real one? That starts with a bad chicken dinner, a lazy joke under my breath, and one quiet laugh from across the table. A laugh that felt like someone finally saw me in a room full of strangers. Sometimes, when we're curled up on the couch watching reruns, I'll bring it up. Remember what you said after I made that MBA crypto joke? Aaron grins, without looking up from his phone. You mean when I told you it was mean, but in a good way? Exactly. He'll pause whatever he's doing, tilt his head toward me, and say, You look smug. I liked that, like you knew something everyone else didn't. And I'll say, I did. I knew you were going to fall for me. And he'll roll his eyes and then pull me closer. The thing about Aaron is, he never needed grand gestures. We didn't fall into each other in a blaze. We found each other in the in-between spaces. The quiet ones. The awkward silences. The overlooked corners of crowded rooms. It wasn't fireworks. It was warmth, steady and slow and deep. And somehow, that turned out to be more lasting. We still laugh about how neither of us saw it coming. Two gay guys at a work event, assuming the worst, that it would be awkward or forced or meaningless. We were both so sure we'd leave with nothing but polite memories and maybe a branded water bottle. Instead, we left with a relationship, a home, 100 inside jokes no one else would ever understand. A few months ago, at a friend's wedding, we were slow dancing, badly, off-tempo, slightly tipsy, and he leaned in and whispered, "You ever think about how it's always the dumbest jokes that change your whole life?" I smiled and kissed his jaw. All the time. He laughed, quietly, like he always does. That same laugh from the first night, the one that started everything.